Hello, welcome everybody. Good morning. And I am Dr. Maggie Hoerger, and I'm currently serving as the president of the UKSBA. And what I wanted to chat with you about this morning was professional certification and positive behavior support. How important it is to the UKSBA that we're really aligned and working closely with the PBS community. And then to tell you a little bit about what we're doing, where we think the field is moving in terms of professional competence and supervision, but I also would love to hear from you about what's important. So this is sort of a general, for me, fact-finding mission to try and be engaging with PBS practitioners and finding out what you require in terms of feeling confident in a professional body. Okay. So the UK Society for Behavior Analysis was set up in, I think, 2012. Okay. And for many years, we sort of merrily chugged along, and it wasn't very stressful. It was a little bit of a relaxing thing. It was a professional organization. But primarily people who were certified in the fields of behavior analysis, or PBS, were certified by an organization in America called the Behavior Analysis Certification Board. And that system has sort of chugged along merrily for about 25 years. And in 2020, the BACB announced that they were no longer going to certify applicants outside of North America. And I think the feeling about that among lots of us who've been working in this field, I mean, I trained the first BCBAs in the UK. I've been doing this for a really long time. There's a momentary feeling of, oh no, what are we going to do next? And then almost an immediate feeling of what an excellent opportunity. Okay, because what we know about the practice of PBS and behavior analysis in the UK is that we have a really strong community and an excellent set of values, okay? And we need to reflect that in our professional face and who we are going forward. And as I'll talk today, I really need to acknowledge the work of the PBS community in setting those values. Okay, so the work that you've all been doing all these many years, working in multidisciplinary teams in health and social care and education with that values-led practice has, I think, given us a very secure framework of which to sort of stake an identity, right? This is who we are. These are our values. Okay, so I just want to share with you some of that today. Okay, so the mission statement of the UKSBA is to act in the public interest by setting and upholding standards for the competent, safe, ethical, and values-led practice underpinned by the science of behavior analysis. This is, in fact, a new mission statement for us within the past year, and it's very, very operationalized relative to our previous mission statement, which was to be the home of behavior analysis in the UK. That was a bonkers mission statement, really, because how could we possibly encompass everything, right? And we also know that there's a lot of people practicing who don't. Right? We have a lot of people have a lot of different opinions about behavior analysis. And we can't regulate, we can't control all of that, right? What can we regulate? What can we control? Well, we can say that registrants of the UKSBA are safe, competent, ethical, and values-led. Okay, so this is our house of people who practice in the UK are competent, safe, ethical, and values-led. I cannot defend every practice of PBS and every practice of behavior analysis in the United Kingdom, but I can absolutely stand on a hill and say UKSBA registrants are competent, trained, and ethical professionals. Okay, and so what I would like to do is sort of convince you of that mission today, get your thoughts on it, and invite you to join us, because this is how we become strong and grown up as a profession. Okay, so I think it's important to talk about professional regulation. So for many years, we've had a relatively small number of behavior analysts certified by an American organization, and I don't want to diminish what that's given us as a field, but also increasingly that American organization didn't necessarily align with our practice. Okay, so the contingencies of practice in North America and the USA are different from the contingencies in the UK. And let me say to anyone, I usually start with this, and I forgot today, for anyone who doesn't know me, I do sound American. I'm aware of that. I grew up in New York State. I went to university in America, but I moved to Wales 25 years ago. My entire professional career, well, my grown-up professional career has happened in the United Kingdom. I very much identify as Welsh and British. So when I talk about what they're doing in America, I sort of mean it from our point of view here in the UK. Okay, so professional regulation, why is it important that we have a UK identity? Well, first of all, we need to think about the risk. What is the risk of having an unregulated profession? Well, one is that consumers don't know who they're hiring. I think we probably all feel this. So somebody can go on a 2-day workshop and then claim to be the PBS practitioner for their bit of the health service, right? Or I've been on a course and now I'm the PBS practitioner in education. And we see this increasingly, right? You've all done such an extraordinarily good job of growing the reputation of PBS that we see a lot of services are embracing this title, but we don't know who's really good at it, who's trained, okay? There's a lot of danger in practicing behavioral approaches, and PBS has a behavioral strand in it without significant training. Okay, so my master's students at Bangor this year, they've been doing this now for 2 semesters, and we're only just coming to terms with the enormity of consequences, right? What are the risks of consequent-led interventions? Well, they're huge, right? There's a lot of risk of consequent-led interventions. Can we then chuck them out and say we don't use consequences? No, we're not going to teach any skills that way if we do that, right? So there's a great deal of knowledge and expertise that we need to do this job well. We're professionals, right? We are carefully trained professionals. So we want to indicate to consumers that practitioners are well qualified, okay? There is a risk that I think we can all acknowledge in the practice of behavior analysis and PBS that people practice without ethics and values, okay? You don't have to go very far to find a story about a behavior analyst who was engaging in practice that doesn't align with our values. And how have we coped with that over the years? Well, we do things like say, I don't do that sort of behavior analysis, right? That's not me, that's them. I'm lovely, just trust me. I'm the lovely kind of PBS practitioner. I'm the lovely kind of behavior analyst. I respect neurodiversity. I advocate for my clients. I work in a multidisciplinary setting. I can talk like a normal person, right? And I promise not to, throw out the word, discriminative stimulus and conditional discriminations and motivating operations and MDTs, right? But it's a defensive stance, right? It's I'm that nice kind of practitioner, just trust me, okay? And we don't want to be defensive, right? We want to say, no, this is who I am. We want to be able to take a positive approach to our practice, to stand up very proudly and say, this is who we are, these are our values. So the importance of professional regulation, one says to consumers, this person's trained, this person respects an ethics code, this person has signed up to a set of values. And in a sense, then we don't have to say, I'm not that kind of behavior analyst. Instead, we say, I am this kind of practitioner. Okay, I'm a UKBA certified practitioner, and that means that my practice aligns to these ethics and these values, okay? And it also instills a sense of professional belonging and identity. I think often we're kind of on the sidelines, right? The speech and language therapists and the occupational therapists and the teachers and the nurses, they all have a very strong professional identity. And sometimes we're sort of saddling up to the table, still relatively new, having to justify our place in the MDT. Okay, so this professional certification gives us a sense of legitimacy and belonging. Okay, So how do we do this? Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through what we mean by competent, safe, ethical, and values-led. Okay, so what does it mean to be safe? Well, that's actually really straightforward. We require all registrants who practice PBS to demonstrate that they have professional liability insurance. Okay, this doesn't mean a lot to those of you who are working for large organizations or in the NHS or in schools because your employer has this on your behalf. This is more relevant to people who work as independent providers. Okay, do they have professional liability insurance if something goes wrong, right? Are they covered? Right. We need to ensure that everybody has safeguarding training. Gosh, this goes back. I remember sitting in meetings 20 years ago where it was pointed out that PBS practitioners and behavior analysts didn't have any mandatory safeguarding training. Okay, so we insist upon that. And we also insist upon seeing an enhanced DBS. Okay. Again, if you work in a large organization, these things are happening and you probably don't even twig them. But especially for people who are working independently, we want to demonstrate that we're looking at these things. We acknowledge them. And that's all part of our PSA accreditation. So in 2023, the UKSBA became an approved provider of an approved register for the PSA. And this is enormous. I can't really tell you what a big step forward this is for our profession because this is our professional regulation. This is a UK government organization saying we acknowledge behavior analysis and PBS is a legitimate profession. Now, some of you might be thinking, what about the HCPC? And yeah, we hear you. The HCPC is no longer open to new professions. That is not a pathway for us. In fact, the HCPC is a register associated underneath the Professional Standards Authority. Okay, we are also aware that there are movements in some parts of, especially England, around professional regulation, and we're keeping an eye on what else we need to do to be moving towards licensure, some sort of professional regulation. But for now, this PSA is our primary pathway, and what it does is it gives us a sense of legitimacy, and also we have to be very accountable to them. Okay, so they come to us and say, what is your stance on protected characteristics? How are you monitoring safeguarding? How does your complaints panel work? And every year we need to report back to the PSA and demonstrating that we are meeting their standards. Okay, so as a profession, our regulation stands consistently with other similar professions in health and social care. Okay, the register is taken in the service of public protection. It's to protect the consumer, and it increases, again, consumer confidence that the professional that they're hiring has signed up to be accountable. Okay, because as part of our PSA regulation, but also as part of being a grown-up profession, we need to be accountable for our work. Okay, so we have met the standards of the PSA, and that means that we have a very significant complaints procedure. Okay, that is used. I will tell you this is used, right? The UKSBA provides a great deal of support for registrants who are complained about and for people who do complain. And what we're finding is that there are pockets where we need to do better as a profession, and we're learning about them through the complaints procedure. We have sometimes, very rarely, okay, super rarely, but not never, had complaints related to safeguarding. Okay, and we can really clearly say that's unethical practice. Okay, but what that complaints procedure does is it makes us accountable. It says, I stand by these ethics, these values, these practice standards, and you can hold me to them. Okay, it's a stance of bravery, really, to say, I agree to be governed by this organization. Okay. And again, that protects consumer confidence. They know that when they're hiring UKBA certs, they're hiring a professional who is accountable to a larger organization. Okay. And so we have a robust complaints procedure. The bit I didn't mention about the UKSBA in the beginning, which is, I sort of think, central to understanding where we are, is that it remains a voluntary board. Okay, so the complaints procedure is taking up a significant amount of our resource, and we're looking at how do we deal with that, how do we cope with that going forward, and what are the policies. Okay, so that's how we know that our registrants are safe. Okay, they have DBS, they have safeguarding, they have insurance, and they agree to be governed by our complaints procedure. Okay, I want to talk now about our ethics. So the UKSBA has a very significant code of ethical and professional conduct that was recently updated last year. Okay, it was updated last year, and it contains a lot of the normal bits of a code of ethical and professional conduct, but also this is the place where we are really very free to assert our values. Okay. So remember when I said in the beginning that what we want to be as a profession is not the defensive kind, say, I'm not that sort of practitioner. We want to say, I'm this sort of practitioner. This is actually where we're staking, this is the hill we're staking our flag on, okay? And so I just want to show you a few of the more recent addition to our ethics code, which take us out of a defensive procedure and into a very confident professional stance. Okay, so Katie, you're going to give us a word?
I am. Sorry. Thanks, Maggie. I'm going to hop in here. Just with the very first word, if you are collecting CEUs for this session today, it is lupin. Lupin. That's with a capital L and no spaces. So that's lupin. Thank you very much, Maggie. Sorry.
No, thank you. Thank you for doing that, so I don't have to think about it. Okay, so registrants do not support efforts to suppress self-regulatory behaviors, except in rare cases when the behavior poses harm or a significant risk to well-being. In such cases, the registrant must first ensure that the risk cannot be ameliorated by reasonable changes to the environment. We're not going to go in and start bringing in consequent-led interventions to change self-regulatory behaviors. If the person is hurting themselves, if they're in danger, can we adapt the environment so that this behavior isn't necessary, right? That there are very natural alternatives by adapting the environment. This is a lot of the work that you've all done in capable environments expressed here in our ethics code. The registrant acknowledges the function of the self-regulatory behavior and always prioritizes the well-being of the client by ensuring that functionally equivalent alternative behaviors are supported and encouraged. Okay, so why is this in our ethics code? Well, partly it's in our ethics code in response to a lot of the criticisms we have in practice, okay? Where people say, oh, ABA, PBS, they don't, they try and stop people from engaging in self-stimulatory behaviors. They work on normalizing. And we do know that practitioners have engaged in those behaviors in the past. I think when we say, oh, I'm not that sort of practitioner, this is sort of what we're talking about, okay? So rather than say, oh, no, we don't do that, we actually are confidently saying this is who we are, we don't do this. And if you see a UKBA cert doing this, you can complain, and we will investigate, and we will take action. Okay, so that we say this is who we are. We don't engage in that sort of practice. Okay, because one of the things we know about the practice of ABA and PBS is, especially when it's rooted in the science of behavior, is quite neutral, right? But our practice is values led. So we get to decide what kind of practitioners we want to be and how we are going to enhance the lives of our clients and ensure that they have the skills they need to lead their very best lives. Okay. We state that individuals only support, registrants only support individuals in pursuit of changes to their behavior that are meaningful to them. Okay. Registrants never select goals independently, but only do so in collaboration with those whom they serve, and when appropriate, those who advocate for them. Okay. So what this means is we don't come in with our own normalizing agenda, right? We are not coming in and saying, oh, you need to be able to do this and that and, move around. We say, what's important to you? Is this behavior important to you? Is it not? Years ago, so long ago that I can talk about it, I had a client who just walked around with his ears plugged, right? And his mom didn't want him to do that. She wanted him to, she thought it made people stare at him, and she wanted us to, encourage him to put his hands in his pockets. And well, who's that serve, right? Is that meaningful to the client? Not really. Okay, so who's it meaningful for? How do we engage in these behaviors? We work really closely on this. I can see I'm missing a slide that a couple slides actually, that I wanted to have, so I'm just going to tell you about them. We have in our ethics code a line that says registrants respect and value neurodiverse identities. Registrants always advocate for acceptance of neurodiverse identities. Okay. Again, this is us saying we are this kind of practitioner. We are not out there, right, saying, oh, we're just secretly normalizing everybody. No, we're taking a very aggressive and assertive stance on saying, this is who we are. Okay. These are the hills. This is the hills we're going to die on. This is who we are. We have stances against punishment. We have stances against conversion therapy. We have stances saying that our primary function is skill building. Okay. We have long statements on assent, right? So now we're really starting to talk about assent in practice, not consent. A lot of our clients, if they can consent, absolutely, we prioritize consent, right? But so many of our clients, especially in learning disability services or when we're working with young children, maybe don't have capacity to give full informed consent. So how are we checking in on assent? Are they happy to be working with us? Right? Is the client happy to be doing what you're doing with them? If not, slow down, step back, try a different way, come at it in a different direction. Okay. People should want to see you when you turn up to do your practice, right? So again, rather than being defensive and saying, oh, just trust me, I'm the nice kind of practitioner, I'm a UKBA cert. And I'm a UKBA cert, and that means that I subscribe to these practice standards. And if I don't, you can hold me accountable. Okay. This is what it means to be a grown-up profession. Okay. We have significant standards on EDI. We're working on this. Gosh, I feel like I would never even begin to say that we're great at this, because we're always learning and changing and and doing something and finding out that we can still be better. So the point of view of the board on EDI is to remain curious and open. Okay. So it is a core value of the board. It's discussed by every committee. It's a standing item in every single agenda that comes on. And we are committed to advancing practice and protecting consumers and members. And we have 2 working groups, one to target racial diversity and one to make sure our work in neurodiversity continues to grow and expand. Okay. These aren't always easy conversations to have, but we are very much committed to having them, to working with the service user, to making sure that our practice is respectful and compassionate. Okay. So this is an ongoing bit of work. So this is how we have our safe standards, our ethical standards, our values-led standards. Okay, so now I want to talk about competent. How can we say that a behavior analyst or a PBS practitioner is competent? Okay, and this is where we are looking at 3 levels of certification. Okay, so when people, and these are sort of aspirational at this point. We're about halfway there, and being able to release these levels of certification, but this is the direction we're going in. Okay, we have UKBA certs who are our master's level practitioners. I'll talk about that. UKBA assistants and UKBA vocational members. Okay, all members who are certified by the UKSBA must demonstrate that they have met minimum standards of competence, and that supervised experience is demonstrates practice competence. And when I talk about competence, well, I'll tell you what competence means. Okay, so to be a UKBA cert, this is a master's level qualification, and all UKBA certs need a minimum of 120 talk credits at the postgraduate level in behavior analysis, or PBS. Okay, I'm a little bit embarrassed now because I think I've been working between two talks and I haven't updated my slides completely. In fact, at Bangor, we just changed. In fact, we just pulled the behavior analysis course and we're highlighting our PBS course. This course must be approved by the UKSBA. These courses in the UK are taught at Kent, at Queen's, at Ulster, at the University of South Wales, and at Bangor. Okay, we will allow coursework again from the United States or other countries as well, but we encourage people, especially people practicing in PBS, to do their studies in the United Kingdom, because we weave these conversations about the UK ethics code right through the teaching. Okay, what does it mean to work? We sort of assume that the practice of PBS is a multidisciplinary practice. We assume the ethics code, we work through these issues. Okay, so studying at the master's level in the United Kingdom gives practitioners fluency in their field. It gives them the context for the history of the practice and where we're going, so that, and what the postgraduate study gives you is that you don't just have your own experience to draw on, you've got all this knowledge. Okay, we need both knowledge and experience to be creative and fluent practitioners. And so we encourage everybody who wants to achieve this highest level of qualification to study in the UK at an approved course sequence if possible. Okay, candidates will need to have a master's degree, but that's a large, it doesn't have to be in PBS, because lots of people already have master's degrees in other topics. Completion of the professional and competence standards, which I'll discuss briefly, and submission of 2 case studies. There is not an exam for the UKSBA to qualify, and that is for 2 reasons. One is we don't think an exam actually demonstrates good practice. I think we all know of practitioners who've passed an exam in behavior analysis, but that doesn't mean they share our values. Okay, it's really hard to assess values on an exam. It's easy to know the right answer. It's a little bit harder to demonstrate that right answer. The other reason we don't have an exam is because we can't confidently say that we respect and advocate for neurodiversity and then require a multiple choice exam as entry to our profession. Okay, so there isn't an exam. That makes some people feel really happy and makes people who sat that exam feel very nervous. Well, I sat that exam and that was a really, it's a barrier that I think everybody should have to go through. So this is a a polarizing issue, I would say, but there's not an exam. Okay. In addition to the coursework, we know that knowledge in PBS only gets you so far. In fact, what's more important than knowledge is your practice. Okay. So instead of saying you just have to work in the field for so many hours, we have identified as a profession 80 some odd competence standards of how people need to practice. Okay. So over the course of their training, all trainees will demonstrate competence on all 80 some, I forget how many, I think there's 88. There's some number, 80, there's 85, in fact, 85 competence items that are a mixture of knowledge I understand how to do a preference assessment. I can assess the function. I can work with key stakeholders to identify skills. I can fade reinforcement. I can generalize to other settings, right? You can be good at those things. Actually, we've always been good at those things. I can work as a multidisciplinary team. I can speak to other professionals in a way that makes them not hate me. That's not actually how we wrote it, but you know what I mean. I can reflect upon my own culture and biases in these situations. I can look after myself. Okay. I can consider the opinions and value the opinions of other professionals. Okay. These aren't always skills that have been trained up in behavior analysts, let's be clear. Right? And when we stand up and say, oh, I'm not that kind of behavior analyst, these are often the very things we're talking about. But and this is where PBS has just been so brilliant, right? Because PBS, which grew in this multidisciplinary culture, right? We think about what is PBS? It started in that MDT, right? And so the values of PBS that start in PBS are now informing the entire profession. Okay, so I think anybody who practices PBS would look at these competence items and feel very comfortable that they reflect who you believe you are in your practice. Okay, we have 3 key values that all these competence items are based on. We are committed to understanding individuals. We respect EDI. We ensure that the goals, methods, and outcomes of intervention are important to, understood by, and created with individuals and their advocates. Okay. Value 2, we are committed to understanding the context of behavior. We take a constructional approach. Those of you who remember your gold diamond, we're referencing that here. We wish to recognize the starting point and work to extend knowledge and skills. Our practice is rooted in function and skill building. Okay, and we're humble. We remain curious, demonstrate a willingness to change in response to new information. We advance our individual practice in the field. Okay, we all know that there's been practice in the name of ABA and PBS that doesn't reflect who we are, that doesn't align with our values. We need to acknowledge that, and we remain curious and open-minded, and we advance on. And this is the real power, I think, of the UK-based professional regulation. We get to move on, right? And we're committed to moving on, and we're committed to remaining curious. Okay, so the competence framework is available on the website and looks something like this. Okay, this is the very first set, which is that like 1.1.7, a trainee PBS practitioner makes decisions based on data rather than their own opinions, values, and biases, works in collaboration with clients and other stakeholders to select behavioral goals and interventions, only provides services after obtaining appropriate assent and consent. So rather than just saying, oh, you need to practice for 2,000 hours and we're going to just keep an eye on you, we are saying that these are the skills that you need to demonstrate in your practice, okay, to become certified as a UKBA cert. Somebody needs to say, I agree that that client, that trainee can do those things. Now, this is making this whole system is really different and it's a shock to the system. I am providing training what feels like almost constantly on behalf of the UK SBA for this, and we are really happy to chat with you about this. In some ways, I think it's going to be easier for people who identify as PBS practitioners because there's room for like normal human judgment in this. Okay, we're not saying that somebody needs to obtain consent 3 times in 3 different settings, you know, over 3 months. Don't do that. That's weird, right? What you need to do, there's room for nice human values and judgment in these settings. Okay, so all members who are certified, will do some portion of the competence framework. I'm not going to get into all the routes and pathways to UKBA cert at this time. That's on the website, and you can check in with me if you care. I do that all the time, so probably if you follow me at all, you know them already. Okay. People who are UKBA certs will have to take 16 hours a year of continuing education on topics of ethics, neuro, including particular CEUs on ethics, neuro, and racial diversity. Okay. These are important topics to us, and we insist that people maintain them. Now, sometimes people say, wait, we don't want to have to do that every year. Could we do it every 2 or every 3? And the reason is no, because we need to keep an eye on your insurance and your DBS and your safeguarding every year. And those things don't tend to all align. So we renew on an annual basis. Also, all UKBA certs will need 12 hours of peer supervision each year. We're not going to get really dogmatic about what that looks like. This came at the request of members. They said, I work in the NHS, and those people all get peer supervision, but they won't give me they won't give me time for that because it's not in my professional regulation. So this was in response to a member request to insist that people take peer supervision in a one-to-one setting. Okay, so that's the UKBA cert. Very soon, we'll be launching the UKBA assistant category. We know that not everybody who practices has a master's degree, and the UKBA assistant is also on the PSA register, and they have undertaken significant training in positive behavior support, or ABA, and they work under the supervision of a UKBA cert. Okay. And by supervision, I mean 2 to 3 hours a month of documented one-to-one supervision with a UKBA cert. Okay. In that supervision, they need to chat, they need to keep some records about what they're talking about. Okay, so we're saying, and we're not even going to put any restrictions on what UKBA assistants do, right? We know there's a lot of really qualified people out there, but they need to run past a master's level practitioner. I'm doing this sort of functional assessment. I'm doing the BBAT. I'm doing the QABF. This is what I found. These are my plans. They just have an opportunity to talk about their practice, and they need to document it in case for their own protection if they get complained about, right? Then they can say, no, look, I sought supervision on this topic. Okay, because there's a tension in the field right here, right? There's a tension that local authorities will say, oh, we don't need master's level qualifications. Everybody can be an assistant, right? I think we need to, but also the assistants are doing amazing work, right? So how do we balance the expertise and the autonomy of the assistants, but also making sure that they are supported and have a place to just check in with their practice? So I'm hoping, I can't be exactly sure when, but in the next few months, people with these qualifications will be able to apply to the UKSBA to register as UKBA assistants. That's anybody with a PG DIP or a PG cert that doesn't have the whole master's, an ABA or PBS, BC ABAs, anybody who did their undergraduate degree at Edge Hill or the PBS, the BSc and PBS from Kent, KBAS Teacher 1s who are graduates, the level 6 and 7 PBS graduates from Northumbria, anybody who's done BTEC level 5 professional diploma in the Swansea Bay course, and also build BTEC level 5 and above, okay? So anybody really level 5 and above can qualify as an assistant. These people say, I practice safely, ethically, values-led, and I take my profession seriously enough that once a month I sit down and have a cup of coffee with someone and talk through my practice. Okay? It's being accountable for your values, for your training, for your practice. Okay? UKBA assistants, like I said, will have to have 2 to 3 hours a month of one-to-one supervision. And in the first year of certification, they need to use that time to demonstrate competence on key part of our framework. Okay. I think what we see in this list is a lot of really different pathways to qualification. Okay. Some of these pathways are people who've had a great deal of experience, but maybe a little bit less formal training. Other people in this route may have had a great deal of formal training, but less explicit work on values and ethics. Okay, so that first year of certification, people are just going to need to use that supervision to demonstrate their competence. Okay. There will be a UKBA vocational qualification announced in 2026. Okay, that will be the entry-level qualification that will mostly be for people who are delivering service. So BTEC 3 or 4, RBTs. We will be certifying individual courses that people might want to deliver in their place of work. These people will also be required to be supervised by a UKBA assistant or a UKBA cert. Again, they're accountable. They support our professional standards, our values, our ethics, and they take supervision. Okay. For now, what we have instead are practicing members, okay? Our UKBA assistant and our UKBA vocational routes are not fully developed yet because we are a volunteer organization and progress is slower than we would like. We're working on that. We don't have a lot of money to hire people. And so this is a labor of love from people who volunteer their time to the board. But we'll get there. I'm sure in the next few years we will get there in terms of having a staff who can make sure that we do things a little bit more quickly. But for now, we encourage people to join as practicing members, which is the current membership category for practitioners who meet safety standards, but have not yet met certification requirements. Okay, so these members have demonstrated DBS safeguarding and insurance, and they agreed to our values and our ethics and submit to our complaints procedure. So again, legitimizing the field. Okay. I strongly urge everybody to join the UKSBA because this is how we say, this is where we take our stand in our values and our ethics, right? This is where we say, this is our practice, these are our values, these are our ethics, and we're confident enough in this to submit to professional regulation. We are not a rogue profession. We are a grown-up profession who is equal to other similar professions such as counseling and speech and language therapy and occupational therapy. We've taken similar amounts of training. We are a grown-up and regulated profession. And we need everybody to get on board with this because this is how this whole conference is called Learning from Our Mistakes. How do we learn from our mistakes? Well, we stop going solo and we come together and we commit, right? We commit to these standards and these ethics. So I very much encourage everybody to join the UKSBA because this is how we can ensure the practice of PBS is safe and ethical and effective. Okay, it's a way to advocate for accountability and indicates that we take our values and expertise seriously, okay? And you can absolutely feel free to contact the UKSBA. This president at UKSBA account, I believe, is going to go live sometime this morning. I just had the email before I logged on. I haven't gone into it. So you can write me there. They've given me an email address. Baby steps. And you can also write Sam at the UKSBA, and you can always reach me at Bangor if you know me that way too. Okay, so what I'd really like to do now is to stop and take questions.
Thanks, Maggie. That is brilliant. It's really interesting when you see it all sort of laid out that way because I can only imagine the work going on in the background. But as you said, it's such a labour of love, and it is very much appreciated from people in the field. I can tell you, it's really exciting to see this shift towards practitioners who are experienced and have some of those soft skills and those things that maybe necessarily weren't being captured before. Yeah. I think it's brilliant. So thank you very much. Very quickly before we go into questions, I'm just going to give out the second keyword if that's all right. So anybody who is collecting CEUs for this session, the second keyword is Flitwick, which is Flitwick. That's with a capital F and no spaces. Just to reiterate, if you are collecting CEUs, I cannot re-give these words after the session is finished. So please make sure you have these words before you leave the session. All right, thanks, Maggie. We'll go on to a couple of the questions then.
Okay.
So the first question is, in regards to supervision,
Yeah.
can that be obtained from a distance supervision rather than working directly with a supervisor?
Yeah, we know that. Like, I'm out here in Northwest Wales. Some people work rurally. Yes, there are most of the competence items are demonstrated just by chatting, right? There are some that are in red that need to be observed, but you can arrange for those to be observed via like telesupervision.
Yeah.
So, and when we get into peer supervision, or especially, I think this is going to be relevant for assistants who may not have UKBA certs, within their organization. Absolutely. We acknowledge that remote supervision is helpful. I will say that we're keeping it in-house. So what won't be allowed is to like get a BCBA from Florida to supervise practice in the UK, because we feel like the context of practice in the UK is unique, and that the values and the ethics of the UKSBA are fundamental to that supervision. And so that needs to be done from a UKSBA or UKBA cert.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Thank you very much. That's great. The next question then was around the equivalent to the RBT. So do we have
Yeah.
any update on the RBT equivalent?
That will become out as our vocational standard,
Okay.
right? And I'm going to say that I think that sets sort of the minimum bar of what will be the vocational training. So the RBT training from the BACB is a 40-hour training, and that's what I think we'll be looking at as a minimum equivalent. But we do not have that announced yet. We're just about to launch the assistant, and we're beginning work on that vocational qualification.
I'll give you a week, Maggie. That's fine. Don't
For
worry.
now, we encourage those people to register as practicing members.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Okay, thank you very much. Is there, my questions are jumping around, bear with me. Is there a minimum requirement for the number of CEUs in ethics and diversity specifically?
Yes, I think it's 2 in ethics, 1 in racial diversity, and 1 in neurodiversity. Those will be, I don't even know if that's updated on the website. That will be announced soon. And that will be relevant to everybody who renews from 2026. Okay, so essentially we're in this kind of funny limbo where lots of people are still working towards their American qualification. In 2026, the UKSBA will start certifying people who don't have other qualifications. And at that point, anybody who renews from 2026 will need these CEUs. And if anybody's wondering, we are working on that equivalent of the ACE provider status, and that should be announced soon too.
Amazing. Okay, thank you very much. And in terms of the current practicing members then, once the UKBA CIST and the vocational certification are up and running, will they sort of be phased out? Will those individuals be
Yes. So
automatically-
long-term practicing member, this is a placeholder category. It's a little bit dangerous, right? Because essentially what it does long-term is that anybody can join and get that PSA badge. Okay. And it's safe in that they are committing to our values and our ethics and our complaints procedure. But also it's placeholding at the moment. We also want people to commit to our competence standards. And so, but we're looking at several years before that is fully phased out. So people can join that with confidence, knowing that there'll be a good lead time before we phase it out.
Brilliant. Okay, lovely. Thank you very much. I hope that answers that question. Oh, there's lots. I'm trying to do them in an order that makes sense. So next one, again, around this the RBT stopping within the UK context. Are there recommended courses for staff to undertake to allow them to meet that role equivalence once it's announced in 2026?
Not yet, but that will be coming. Okay. Essentially, what we need to do is work out our own curriculum for recommended content. For now, we're encouraging people to do the RBT, knowing that it's sort of deeply, that it doesn't necessarily reflect our values, and isn't actually very appropriate to the practice of PBS. I think when we start to look at that vocational level, we're going to see something probably that needs to be much more specific to practice. So somebody working in adult health and social care is going to have different training than somebody working in Key Stage 1 in a special needs school. So there's not going to be one set of standards. It'll probably be quite general and equally weighted with values. And each organization will need to decide what are the actual skills people need. So when we get into this, we start to separate the skills of practicing PBS from the values and the ethics. And so it becomes almost more complicated to train at that level and to set a standard.
Yeah, but that level of flexibility is amazing, isn't it? I mean, to have something that you can sort of flexibly work to what you actually need in your context is brilliant. It's just a lot of work together. Okay, so another question around sort of an apprenticeship route. So do you think qualifications will be available via an apprenticeship route?
Oh, that would be great, wouldn't it?
Another bit of homework for you,
I can
Maggie.
tell you from the university point of view that we're going to need to be looking at alternative routes. Yes, if anybody knows anything about that, please get in touch. I'd really like to learn more. We're certainly not against that and can see that that would be excellent, but we're not talking about it now, mostly because I don't have any idea how it works.
No,
But if you do know how it works and you want to chat about it, be in touch because I'm very curious.
I'll take the names of people asking those questions for you.
Okay. I've got kids in uni too. I mean, the apprenticeship route looks so appealing for so many reasons.
Yeah. We do have a few questions about sort of very people specific, so people who've got their qualifications and wondering what route they can go. For those individuals, are we recommending they go towards the UKSBA website and have a look at what's laid out there?
Absolutely. I can see some of them. So if somebody wants to be a UKBA cert, they need the approved course sequence. Okay, so if you've studied at other places, I know that historically Tizard has offered quite a lot of courses. Though some of them meet the standards and some of them don't. Okay, so that we need to see that those 120 credits of an approved curriculum. Okay. If you historically did an approved curriculum years ago and never made it through the BCBA standards for any sort of reason, you are actually welcome to join the UKSBA now as well. So there's a pathway for those people who probably missed out for reasons of task list changing and life getting in the way.
Yeah. Okay. There's just hopping towards CEUs then, there's a question around how readily available CEUs are in specific fields. So ethics CEUs are widely available, but potentially other categories don't seem to be. I think that would be...
Yeah. So the UKSBA will... Well, there's two strands to this. One is we will commit to providing them every year from the organization in an in-person event in the spring or an online event that happens in the autumn, which can be purchased at your time. We also don't plan on holding a monopoly on that, so are working towards being able to certify professionals to deliver those as well. Okay, so that's a piece of work in the background. So we'll make sure that you can take them in person or online from us, or they'll be available in other places as well.
That's brilliant.
There's a conference coming up the week after next in London. All these will be available then. And then there'll be online events in November as well.
Right. Okay, that's brilliant. Thank you. From what I can see, the remaining questions are very individual specific around their own qualifications. So for those individuals, please do get in touch personally with the UKSBA at the websites that Maggie, email address, sorry, that Maggie shared a moment ago. And I'm sure your questions can be helped rather than going into each individual person's
absolutely
qualifications and backgrounds. But I don't think I've missed anything. That is great. Maggie, thank you so much for today. We really appreciate
my pleasure. Thanks for having me. I also would like to hear from PBS practitioners. What do you need? Right? How do we bring PBS centrally, I think, to be represented, the voices of the PBS practitioner community?
Yeah, it would be great. Obviously, we've got the PBS SIG running alongside with the UKSBA as well. So that might be a really nice forum if people want to get in touch and have those conversations as well. That would be brilliant.
Yeah, because you're all doing amazing work, hand on heart. So much respect for the PBS community and setting values and doing good work and making yourselves really likable, right? So that the work continues and people want to see this field grow.
Oh, Maggie, thank you so much.